So how do you fix problems you have with the sickness of the soul? You go to wise people, Shem Rofei Nefashos, who are the doctors of souls. Shem Lamni Mosam, who teach them, until they bring them back to a good path. Hamakirim B'deos Rosh, who know their negative opinions, in other words, their shortcomings, their character flaws. Those who know about them, but don't go to a doctor, to a wise person. Tell them, it says about these people, Shlomo says about these people, wisdom and musar, which means knowing what the right thing to do is. The foolish people have made a mockery of it. In other words, if a person has any aspiration to be a good person, which hopefully we all do, so then we want to fix our negative traits. Obviously the negative traits, sometimes we need guidance in order to fix them, because we can't always figure out the right thing to do on our own. Sometimes, a lot of times it can, but we can't, so we have to find some way of dealing with it. And there are two ways of dealing it, as mentioned here, by going to people. Another way of dealing it is, nowadays, of course, we have many svarim, many books of different kinds. And these books, of course, help us. And as I'm not sure I mentioned last week, but there's Ramah in Shulchan Aruch, I think as he mentioned this, yes, who says that today our svarim are our rabbeim. So therefore, it's you don't always have to go specifically to a person, although that's helpful, but you go to a book. Okay, so you have several people, many they really want to look for the good way of doing things, but they don't know what's good for them. And every day they say, I'm going to be the best possible person I could be today. But they never reach their entire lives. Why not? It's because of two reasons. A lot of people don't recognize their shortcomings. You don't know your own bad ways. Now, a lot of people among us are not self-aware. Chazal put it so strongly, they say, a person doesn't see their own shortcomings, right? So therefore, if you have a good friend, you have a mentor, you have a teacher, so one of the things they'll do for you as a favor is point out in a good way, in a nice way, where you could help improve yourself, right? It's sometimes very tough to accept that, especially from a friend, because you feel that the friend is being kind of holier than thou. But a good friend does that. A good friend will tell you, listen, I'm not trying to insult you. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. There's this aspect which maybe we could work in it together. I also have the same flaw. However, you can do it in a way which is nice. It's important that everybody be able to communicate. And remember, we learned about the levels of friendship, and the deepest level of friendship, which we spoke about, the highest level, or the third level, was when people can cooperate with each other and to help uplift each other, to make themselves better people. So that is one way in which a person can know what they're doing, perhaps wrong or not as good as they can, and make themselves better, is by having a real good friend who's going to be willing, and of course, both for each other, to talk about where they can improve. That's one. Okay. So a person who doesn't know his own shortcomings, it's like Reuven who's looking for Shimon, has no idea what Shimon looks like, right? If you don't know your own shortcomings, how are you going to look to be better? You don't know what your shortcomings look like. Even look for him the entire day, you won't find him. Sometimes you pass right by him several times a day, and you won't recognize who he is. So to this person. Even though he's saying, what should I do? What should I do? He's always saying, what is the thing I'm supposed to do in this world? Doesn't work. He was looking for the good things to do. He won't attain it. He doesn't know what his shortcoming is. But that guy doesn't know altogether what's wrong with him. But the people who know what's wrong with them, the choshev, let's say, and he wants to leave them. And hold on to good traits. He's never going to get the straight path his entire life. Because he's too lazy to look for good midos. It's like Reuben, who knows who Shimon is, and he recognizes him. But still, he doesn't find him because he's not looking for him the way he should. He's not putting in the effort. Choice silver is the tongue of a righteous person. In other words, he's going to be able to tell you what issues you have to tackle and how, in what way, and where and in which way you can tackle those issues. So I'll be perfectly honest with you. I don't think when I was your age, I had any idea of thinking about the world in this way. It's something which I don't think when I was in 8th grade, I had any concept of thinking about what are my shortcomings, what are my character traits which I can improve, and how can I improve them. And certainly I would not think of finding somebody to ask to help me improve my character traits. So who would dream of doing that? You know, that I should go to a teacher, to a Rebbe, and to say, listen, I have this problem. Can you help me improve it? I don't think I would have done such a thing. Later in life, yes, man, not so many years later, perhaps, but this is something where a person, the earlier they get this idea, it's a very powerful idea that I have to start thinking about myself. And, you know, I wrote an article, which I don't know if I ever shared with you, about Pinocchio. I showed you an article about Pinocchio that I wrote. And that doesn't ring a bell. Do you all know what Pinocchio is? Raise your hand if you know what Pinocchio is. Okay, so Pinocchio was a main thing people remember about Pinocchio is that his nose grew long when he lied. Okay, that was the main thing. But there's another thing which is more important. Pinocchio had a cricket, Jiminy Cricket, who was his conscience. And Jiminy Cricket always told him what the right thing to do was. And the Pinocchio tried to, get away from Jiminy Cricket, not to listen to him. And that was why he had many problems. In the book, not in the movie, but in the book, at one point he tries to kill Jiminy Cricket by throwing something at him. So it's a very powerful muscle, if you think about it. It means for most people of any age, the Yetzer HaTov we have, which is the Jiminy Cricket, is outside of us. And we're separate from our Yetzer HaTov. Most people, without thinking about it, they identify with the Yetzer Hara. And the way Rav Dessler explains it says that, let's say there's a cup of ice cream, a delicious, rich, sweet ice cream, and you're on a diet, right? So then you say, I really want the ice cream. And your conscience says you shouldn't have the ice cream. So we think about ourselves as the I want the ice cream. And the Yetzer HaTov is telling us don't have it. And we're for the Yetzer HaTov is coming from the outside and fighting with our Yetzer Hara, telling us don't have the ice cream. But we usually identify with our desire, and we feel that there's something else, whether it's the Torah, whether it's school, whether it's society, telling us don't do what you really want to do. So the trick of becoming more mature is to try and get that Yetzer HaTov into oneself, to identify with one Yetzer HaTov and now with one's Yetzer Hara. And Chazal say that a person doesn't have Yetzer HaTov until they become Bar Bas Mitzvah. What's the meaning of Yetzer HaTov? We know lots of people who are very good, very, very good from a young age. So what does it mean there's no Yetzer HaTov before you become Bar Bas Mitzvah? Doesn't seem to make any sense, right? So the answer to that is that sometimes Yetzer Hara means the inclination to do evil, to do bad stuff, and Yetzer HaTov means the inclination to do good stuff. That's sometimes what it means. But other times it means Yetzer Hara is used to describe your emotion, because you follow your emotions without thinking. Normally it's going to come out bad. Not always, but normally. And Yetzer HaTov is the intellect, thinking. And if you follow your thinking, not always, but usually it's going to come out good, because you'll think things through and you'll do the right thing. So until the age of Bar Bas Mitzvah, a child does the right thing very much, very often, perhaps most of the time, perhaps all of the time, but because they're emotionally driven to do it. It's not because they sit back and think, what is right and what is wrong? What does Hashem want from me in this world? What will make me a better person? and I'll go and do it. No, children don't think along those lines. Children think, oh, I'm going to get a lollipop if I do the right thing. My parents are going to love me more if I do the right thing. Or whatever the case may be, there is no intellectual thought and give and take and consideration back and forth. That comes when a person is already a teenager and able to start, 12 years old for a girl, 13 years old for a boy, and able to start thinking intellectually, to think about things objectively, as opposed to how I'm going to feel at the end of the process. Right? So there are two different things. To how I'm going to feel at the end of the process could motivate me to do something good, but it's based on my feelings. What is the right thing to do also motivates me to do something good, but it's based on my understanding. So the Yetzer Hara Tov is understanding, and you only get start understanding, being able to think about things objectively and independently when you become a little bit older, not when you're a little kid. You can have a brilliant mind even when you're a little kid, right? There's people who are there have been people who mastered the art of playing pianos like expert pianists when they were 3 years old. I think Mozart was 3 years old, already a concert pianist, right? The people who are tremendous at 3 years old know how to read and write. There are lots of things a person can accomplish, but they're not about independent thinking. It's about memorizing. They're about defining a skill. Independent thinking means I can take something which there's a balance, something is unclear, and weigh it back and forth and come to a conclusion. That's objective thinking. So that most people in this world, they don't want to internalize the Yetzer Hara Tov. They prefer the Yetzer Hara Tov remains outside. Now, that is tremendous advantage. Let me explain to you how. In other words, let's say you see your school as your Yetzer Hara Tov, right? So, I mean, of course, you don't want to get kicked out of school. Get out of school would mean you're a bad person. You don't want to be a bad person. You want to stay in school, right? But as long as you stay in school, I'm good. That's one level. Another level is you don't want to get a B. Of course, a person gets a B is a bad person. But as long as I get an A, I'm good. I got the grade. So from this perspective, a person never thinks, okay, what is good because I think it's good? Rather, how can I measure my being good on the basis of some outside test or outside scale of measure? So most people, they don't want to be bothered to think about what's really good, what I really should be doing. That's a pain. It gives you a headache if you start thinking about things like that. They really want to do good on the basis of, oh, I got an A, I'm good. I got an A+, I'm good, right? And they're not, the school sent home a good report card. I didn't get kicked out of school. I didn't get in trouble. So that way, your Yetzer Tov is always outside of you, and you really want to have, you don't want to not have Yetzer Tov, but you don't want to be inside you. You want to be able to measure yourself by outside standards, as opposed to internally determining what I have to do and where I have to go. Girls understand what I'm saying? It's a deep idea. I don't believe that most people watch Pinocchio realize this. But when you watch Pinocchio, you see he's constantly trying to get out of Jiminy Cricket until finally one day he does something, goes and saves his father from drowning, even because of his own life. But he does something tremendous and amazing, which came out of himself and not trying to please somebody else, not trying to make somebody else's expectation, but doing something from his own sense of what the right thing to do was. That became a real boy. Okay, so it's interesting because the muscle is very deep. There's so many deep things in the movie Pinocchio. It's incredible. One of the things which is also deep is that Pinocchio is a puppet, right? A puppet is controlled by strings. Even one happens that Pinocchio is a puppet who has no strings. And there's a puppet show at the beginning of the beginning of the movie, where all the other puppets have strings except for Pinocchio. So what's the meaning of that, Marshall? Pinocchio thinks, oh, I don't have strings. I'm real, right? He doesn't realize that he has strings attached to him. So to most people, they think, look, no strings attached, right? I'm no strings. Nobody else is controlling me. So you don't realize that you have strings attached to you. You don't realize that you have this Yetzer Hara, which is making you do things as if you have strings attached to you, moving all of your body parts. So another great lesson, Pinocchio. That a person who has a person can think, I'm free. But Chazal say, who's a real free person? Only a person who's involved in Torah mitzvahs. Because otherwise, you have the same strings everybody else has. Just you're not thinking of the strings. You're involved in Torah mitzvahs and you think about what's the right thing to do in this world, and you do it accordingly, then you have no strings attached. Okay? So these are very powerful, powerful statements, which we learn from Pinocchio. So one time on this roll, I want to mention one other thing, which is that in Pinocchio, if you ever see the movie, or I don't think it's in the book, but in Pinocchio, the big test is on Treasure Island. In Treasure Island, they have all sorts of, amusement park things with all sorts of negative things like drinking and smoking, all sorts of things. But at the end, the people who give in to their pleasures, they turn into donkeys. The kids who turn in, and this movie is frightening. It's like, I don't know how kids watch it because, you see kids turning into donkeys in the movie. But there's a very profound lesson there. It's like, Mamish could be said by the Maharal, because chamor, the word chamor for donkey means chomer, materialistic. Chomer means material. So you make a person who becomes so materialistic becomes like a donkey. A donkey is stupid. The pasuk says in one of the, I think it's the next week's Haftorah, Yada shor koneu chamor evus ba'olav. An ox knows its master. The donkey doesn't even know its master, but it knows where its food is. It knows where it gets its food. Its master doesn't know. It has no loyalty to a master because it doesn't have the seichel to know master. Ox does. So a chamor represents us the ultimate in stupidity. So a person who becomes so involved in driving after their material pursuits, their pleasures in this world, they eventually become a chamor. Okay, so again, all this goes back to this idea of the internalizing our Yetzer HaTov. Now, somebody who's on a really high level, which I don't think I'm ever going to get to, but somebody who's really high level had somebody I knew once who externalizes Yetzer Hara. In other words, he identified himself as Yetzer HaTov and externalized Yetzer Hara. And the way he did it is he gave his Yetzer Hara a name. There was a famous artist. His name was Rembrandt. And he called his Yetzer Hara Rembrandt. And why he calls Yetzer Hara Rembrandt? Because the Yetzer Hara makes extraordinary paintings and pictures as if they're real. You see a painting by the Yetzer Hara, you think this is real. And it's not. It's just a painting. It's false. It looks real, but it's not real. So he said he would talk to his Yetzer Hara and say, Rembrandt, I know what you're trying to do to me, right? You're showing me that this is a real pleasure. It's not. I know that it's not a real pleasure. I know the ice cream is bad for me. I'm not going to have the ice cream. So what we have to strive and do as much as possible in our lifetimes is try and make the Yetzer Tov inside of us. And we should identify with the Yetzer Tov as much as possible. Again, there are some people get to the point where they even can externalize the Yetzer Hara and say the Yetzer Hara is outside of me. That's Rembrandt. By the way, that was the situation of Adam before he sinned. Before Adam sinned, he had no God, Yetzer Hara. That's what we're taught. It wasn't he had no Yetzer Hara. It means he didn't. He identified completely with his doing the right thing. But there was Yetzer Hara outside of him. It was the snake, right? The snake, just like anybody has things which entice them, can draw them to do bad stuff, even if they didn't intend on doing bad stuff. An external Yetzer Hara. So too, the other matter, external Yetzer Hara. What happened after that is it became internal. And then he started identifying the Yetzer Hara and he started doing all sorts of stuff because he wanted to do it, not just because he was convinced to do it. Okay, any questions on that? It was pretty deep stuff. All right. I hope you're just not sitting there nicely and pretending that you understood. Okay? Do me a favor, don't do that ever. It won't make me happy. Okay, so please ask questions if there are questions. All right, so it goes on to say, Misha no sheba chabero. Somebody loans money to his friend. Uvala shalim kesem mishkan wants to pay him back. Wants to give him money. according to proper weight. If you don't know that you're balanced, in other words, back then you had to weigh the silver in order to pay it and repay it, because the value of a coin was based on the value of the silver. So if you don't have the tools to carefully weigh the silver, or makira call, you know the weights, but silver, there could be pure silver and there could be not pure silver, right? You have to know, is it pure silver? Is it 50% silver? So if you don't know either how to weigh it, or you don't know what its composition is, such a person is very near to being damaged, in terms of weights and in terms of the money. Sometimes he'll refuse the silver and he'll take the dross, which means the silver which is phony silver, which is just like paint. It's like a brick of lead which is painted with silver paint, because he doesn't know how to check out the silver to know this is actually silver. He'll take less than the appropriate measure. Maybe he's going to take a lightweight, or he's going to put the silver in the wrong balance of the scale, right? Scales had balances on each side. It's going to put it on the heavier side, so it's going to balance too much. Remote is going to come to make a mistake. Or even if he knows about silver, sorry. No, yeah, he's but he knows everything. But mishkal, the weight, the kesef is silver. He knows the weight. He knows the silver. We talk about Kuroi. He looks at it properly. Also, mishtalev Kuroi kesef. No, I went. No. He knows everything, inspects everything properly. Then he gets pure silver, and complete silver, and proper weight. That's why the tongue of a tzaddik is being likened to pure silver. The righteous person has to know that what's good and bad and all the midos. And he has to look at them and analyze them carefully. What the Orchos Tzaddikim does in the Sefer, does an amazing thing. By every midah, he tells you what the good uses and the bad uses of that midah. Now, it's even a midah which is mostly bad, like jealousy. He'll tell you, yes, jealousy is a very bad midah, but it's appropriate to be jealous under XYZ circumstances, right? And he'll tell you that he'll tell you anger is a very bad midah, but it's appropriate to anger in XYZ circumstances. And the end, he'll tell you mercy is a very good midah, but it's appropriate not to be merciful and to be cruel under XYZ circumstances. So every midah, there's no such thing as a midah was completely bad or completely good. Everything has to be carefully balanced to know. Some of them you have to take more of the good, some of them take more of the midah, some of them less than the midah, but you can't eliminate any midah. And that makes life very, very difficult. Because if we could just say this is completely bad or this is completely good, we can live black and white lives. And black and white lives sometimes are much easier to live than life which is in grayscale, right? You do everything that can be bad and good in different measures, and something might be right sometimes and wrong the other times. So that's one parcel of what makes us life complicated, is that you have to always balance. Is this the right thing now? Or is this the wrong thing now? And that's not easy, but that's part of what life is all about. So as he says, he has to always has to look at things and and analyze it properly. And make the effort with his body, physically, and his wisdom, to leave stupidity, and to grip onto understanding, which is it sounds easy, right? To leave stupidity and grip onto understanding, but it's not simple at all, because a person has to make a special effort to think about things. Normally, a person, although their brain is working, our brains 9 out of 10 times, 90% of the time, I should say, are thinking about things which don't require any independent analysis, any consideration. and he balances. So it's not easy to to get out of that sense of tifshus, of stupidity, which means unthinkingness, and get to the place where a person's thinking. And to remove the mixture of impurities mimanu from him. Then his soul will be refined and pure, came from God. You see, like it says, remove the impurities from the silver, and it's going to be, and go out and make the vessel pure. Then the vessel is going to be refined. Now, this is also a big problem which we all have. We're not consistent. We know that, right? It's very hard for a person to be consistent across all aspects of behavior, across all situations, across all difficulties, right? Just like you have, it's very hard for you to treat all people the same way. Really, the way you treat a person should have nothing to do with the way those people are. You should treat a person in a good way because you're a good person. But it's almost impossible for people to do that. Because I tend to think this person I like because he's a good person, this person I hate because he's a louse, right? So that's the way people think. But really, it shouldn't have anything to do with whether you like or dislike them. That's what Shammai says, having makabos call them a saver upon him yafos. You got to treat everybody with a smile. So people are not used to doing that because it goes against our grain. Because we assess everything as what do I think about this person, what do I feel about this person, as opposed to how am I supposed to greet this person. And I understand it's extremely, extremely difficult, and I don't know many people who do this, is to be exactly the same with everybody, because you're supposed to relate to people in a good and positive way. But that's, you say, and that's an extreme example, but we have all sorts of examples, right? Some people are inconsistent. Sometimes we go by this type of behavior. Then another time you take yourself out of the mode of that behavior. You take another type of behavior. And that's what a person always does. Like a person who wants to go to the city, he doesn't know which way to go. Doesn't recognize the pathways which are supposed to take him there. He's desolate. He doesn't know exactly what to do. One time he'll go one way, and then he's going to make a mistake and go in the other way. So the third way, and fourth way. And such things Shlomo Melech said, the toil of a foolish person is going to make him exhausted. Because he doesn't know how to get to the city. So here's a person doesn't know, if a person obviously doesn't have the teacher or read the books or use their minds, a person is not going to know which way to go. And they're going to constantly try different ways, and they won't be able to be consistent, and they won't be able to make progress. So obviously a person's got to know what to do. Therefore it says, we have to have mercy upon people who are embedded who are held captive by ropes of meaninglessness in this world. We have to teach other people, right? The tzedek, the right way to weigh things, and how to balance our skills. And to tell them how pure the silver is. To show them the straight pathways. So a person will be able to clarify at the beginning of his thinking, beginning of his checking things out, Mesila, a pathway, Asher Tivianos, to bring him to a place which is very fresh and very pleasant. Asher Sham Koltovera, all goodness is. And what's that place in Midos? For Yiras Shamayim, to be in awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's works in this world. Who's Sof Kol Masim, and that's the end of all things. That's the end. Kohela says. So it's not going to bring it down for some reason. Sof Torah Kol Nishma. In the end, after everything is heard, so Kimira, that's mitzvot, so Shmor. You should appear of God and keep his mitzvot, Kizek Kolam, because that's all that man is about. And he says, Hashem Mikodam. That's what Hashem asks of all people. You see, Ma Hashem Shalom Elkecha Shalom Meimcha Kim Yira. What does Kodesh Baruch Hu ask of you? He only asks of you Yira. And Yira, what does Yira mean? Right? Yira, and I have to get into this more next week. Yira means fear, but the word yira in Hebrew is related to the word re'iyah, which means to see. You can't have awe or fear of Hashem without seeing what Hashem wants from you. In other words, if you have a perspective on what you're supposed to do, then you can have awe because you perceive that thing. If you don't have perspective, then you can't be in awe. And most things in life are like that. You can't love something or have a powerful emotion of respect, of fear, or awe of anything of the sort unless you perceive the thing. Because if you don't perceive it, there's nothing to be in awe of. There's nothing to be even nothing to be afraid of if you don't perceive it. Even certainly nothing to love if you don't perceive it. So there has to be some sort of perception in order to have these powerful emotions. And therefore, yira is connected to iyah. You see, and then you have awe. Okay, so that so therefore, yira shamayim, fear of him means you see everything that shamayim wants from you, or everything it takes for you to get to shamayim, everything Hashem wants from you, everything it takes to come close to Hashem. Then you're in awe of, wow, how amazing that is, and I go ahead and I do it. Okay, so first the person has to have the re'iyah, and then a person can come to yira. It says, you can't, no deed is considered significant unless it's done with pure yira. In other words, that you have, obviously, it's a very powerful statement, and I wouldn't, I don't think what he means is that, not that no deed is significant, it's not done with complete yira, but rather the deed is more significant the more it's done with complete awe of heaven and knowledge that I want to do what heaven wants of me, what Hashem wants of me. So I have to tell everybody. Anybody wants to make himself a better person. Every trait, they have to mix in some of your Shemayim, because you have to know what you're trying to accomplish. Yiras Hashem is a bond, which holds all of the midos together. It's like the string on which you string a pearl necklace. Because you and you make a knot at the end, to hold all the pearls on the necklace. Ain't safek, there's no doubt keeping no sake on that kesher. If the knot comes apart, you blew kol margos, so the pearls are going to spill. So to yira holds all the midos in place. That you know how to use them precisely to connect them with each other and make something beautiful, a necklace, a totality out of it. V'intatir kesher yira, if you open up the knot which yira creates in the necklace, it's going to lose all those good traits. So it's going to scatter all over the place. And if you don't have good traits, you can't have Torah mitzvahs either. All of Torah has to do with fixing one's midos in this world. Any midah which is good or bad. The wise man can make bad midos into good midos. The fool, he's going to make good midos into bad midos. So he goes to darkness, and doesn't pay attention to fixing their midos. He can have one bad trait, which is going to ruin all his mitzvahs. Everything is great, and this one trait undermines everything. God is good in myself. Let's see you do great deeds your entire life, but you're proud of yourself. Look at me, I'm great. I daven with kavanah, I gave such tzedakah, I was kind to people. I'm such a great person. It undermines everything. Because the fact that you did it for your own pride undermines all the good deeds you did, right? He takes honor, and holds himself beautiful. Tamid, always. Worse, by looking down on other people, say, I'm great and you're not. Right? That's a person who's proud, makes himself bigger over other people, looks at other people as being less than him. So if the end of you're doing good deeds becomes you're a proud person and you look down on other people, forget it. You haven't done anything. Vaishu Dam is such person like the Misha Mamali Chavis Yam shows that a person who fills a jug with really expensive wine, There's a small hole at the bottom of the jug. There's no doubt it's going to lose all that great wine in the small hole. And he doesn't close the hole. So to somebody who's proud. Torah is full of Torah. Yovad HaKol is going to lose everything. By this bad trait, if it's not careful to fix it. And this is a big problem, which a lot of people have. I don't think any of you have it, Baruch Hashem, but people have get proud of what they do. And that pride means that everything they do just feeds their ego. And ego is a very bad thing, because ego means everything I do is really for my own self-centered sense of greatness, as opposed to my doing something because Hashem wants me to do it. So gaiva is going to be the first midah he speaks about when you get to the book, because the gaiva at pride is the most dangerous one. Okay, thank you very much. We'll stop here for today. We'll try and post this year. Last week I didn't post it. I forgot. And so I hope to see you all next week at the regular time. I hope it's 7 o'clock. Thank you very much for making time. I really appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good week.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.